So I recently got the chance to put the Canon C80 to the test in a real-world fast-paced environment, shooting a wedding. Now, while I was shooting this wedding, I did learn some pretty great features about the Canon C80, as well as some annoying pain points that I'll go ahead and discuss with you guys in this video. This is going to be a more casual, conversational video. I don't have a ton of B-roll because unfortunately, I only had it rented for a short amount of time. In fact, this is the Canon C70, my friend's C70. Unfortunately, I had to return the C80 almost immediately upon getting back from my shoot. But even still, I have a lot of opinions on it, so let's jump into it. Now, the first thing I want to discuss are the things that I really enjoyed while using the Canon C80 while shooting this wedding. First thing is that sensor. So now we have a full frame sensor on the C80 body style, which is honestly really fantastic. Plus it is a 6K sensor versus a 4K sensor, which when you're shooting in these more dynamic situations, having 6K for flexibility in post-production can be really handy. Unfortunately for this shoot, I was requested to only shoot in 4K 10-bit versus 6K. That's what the editor requested, so I did oblige to that. So we were shooting in 4K, so that's some of the footage that you're seeing right here of the wedding from the Canon C80, but it is still in C-Log 2, and that's one thing that's being carried over from the Canon C70 into the C80 is C-Log 2, and I really enjoy C-Log 2. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I left the Canon system a while ago when I was using the Canon R5 and the R6 Mark II, is that I was limited to C-Log 3, and I've just never really liked C-Log 3 all that much. It does look good when you shoot pretty perfectly, but if you're in a situation where you need it to be more flexible, I just feel like C-Log 2 is just much better than C-Log 3, and I don't like that Canon has limited those other mirrorless cameras with only C-Log 3. So all that being said, C-Log 2 and the Canon C80 is fantastic. Now, one of the biggest things that has changed from the C70 to the C80 is going to be that new triple-based ISO sensor. That means that now you have a base ISO of 800, 3200 and 12,800. And this flexibility is really amazing when you're shooting in a wide variety of situations. I was filming outside in incredibly bright California sunlight in Santa Barbara, and I was also filming inside in various situations. And being able to go between 800 and 12,800, as well as that 3200, a lot of people miss out on that middle base ISO. I think that's actually a really useful feature. But yeah, that's really exciting. Now, in doing so, we've gotten rid of that DGO sensor that everybody really, really loved with the Canon C70. So there is a little bit of a trade-off. For me personally, I think I would pick the triple base ISO, but I know a lot of people loved the C70's DGO sensor. And one thing I will say is that I think that this triple base ISO system is going to become a new standard in all cameras across the industry, unless I'm not aware of some weird patents or something that Canon may have with this. But we already have it in the Canon C400. Now we have it in the Canon C80. I imagine Sony, Lumix, Fujifilm even might start implementing this in their cameras as well, which is honestly pretty exciting. So if you saw in a previous video, I got this really amazing FlexiSpot desk setup, but one new addition that I've just added is their L3 Essential brown leather chair. And this thing is honestly pretty great. Now, it is a chair and it supports my weight just plenty fine, but really what I like about it is just how it feels when I'm sitting down. It does have some nice rigidity so that I'm not like falling back, although if I want to, I can release that and lean really back if I want to just kind of lounge here instead of working. But I do like actually having a more upright sitting situation, so that for me, this is great. Also, it's just really, really plush. So it has a really nice, firm yet soft cushion on both the armrest as well as the cushion itself, which is lovely, of course. And it is on wheels, so if I wanna roll around, I do have that option. But yeah, if you guys are looking for a nice leather chair for your desk setup, maybe you wanna get away from just those gaming chairs. I used to sit in a gaming chair and it was wildly uncomfortable, but if you're looking for a more sophisticated chair for your desk setup, definitely check out the L3 chair from FlexiSpot. I think it could make a nice addition to your desk setup as well. If you're already using the Canon C70. By the way, there's no cap on this. It's a speed booster. I know that's probably bothering some of you guys that it's just left open to the elements, but this is what I was handed when I asked my friend if I could borrow his C70, so this is what we're working with. But one of the amazing things about this camera, as well as the C80, is that you have built-in ND filters. So you have these two buttons on the side, from no ND all the way clear to 10 stops of ND filters. And this is great. I mean, I shoot with mirrorless cameras where I have to use external ND filters. I use the Polar Pro VNDs. They are great, but it is a bit annoying to have to change out your ND filter for the various different situations you find yourself in. But with these style of cameras, you can just press the button, press it again if you need to, and you're good to go. Internal ND is a feature that I wish that I had on a lot of my cameras, and I'm glad it's in the C80. Now, when it comes to autofocus, there are two types of Canon autofocus. They have their mirrorless line autofocus and their hybrid style cameras, and it's honestly fantastic. I really, really love Canon's autofocus. The touch tracking is incredible. And then they have their Canon Cinema autofocus. Canon's two branches don't really communicate, so those two systems are weirdly separated. So I wasn't sure how much I was going to like the C80's autofocus. I used the C500. I knew it would be similar to that. But from everything that I tested, I found that the C80's autofocus kept up just fine. I do think that sometimes it felt a little bit less intelligent than their mirrorless cameras, weirdly, even though it's a more expensive line. Just is what it is, but it's definitely very, very robust. And I do understand that people who are using cinema style cameras like the C80, like the C400, maybe they're gonna use manual focus lens more often than not, but the autofocus on the C80 was really robust and I had no issues with it while shooting on the wedding. Now, one new thing about the C80 over the C70 specifically that unfortunately I didn't get to use, I really wanted to use it, it just wasn't in the cards unfortunately, but it does have up here at the top, not on this C70, but I think I got a clip of it on the C80, it has a full-size SDI out. This is honestly fantastic if you're filming any sort of live events where you're running SDI cable and you're filming in the show situation, instead of having to use those Black Magic HDMI to SDI converter boxes, you can just slam an SDI cable rather right into the C80 and you're good to go. I think that that was a great update. I don't know that there's any SDI at all. I thought maybe there was a mini SDI on the C70, but I actually don't see it. So I'm guessing then it is just the mini XLRs that this thing has. But on the C80, you actually get a full-size SDI out. That is a great feature if you're filming live production. Now let's go ahead and talk about the build design and overall build quality of the C80, especially when you compare it to the C70, because this one actually still has it. It's that rickety C70 screen. I'm happy to say that on the C80, that is not an issue. It is much more robust than your C70. You could send in your C70 and get it fixed, but this one, unfortunately, has not. Yeah, it felt great. I like how chunky this style of camera is. It's just like a really hefty mirrorless camera, or almost like a DSLR, very similar to like the 1DX and the 1DC, of course, from Canon, if you've used any of those cameras. It is in that lane of body design. So yeah, the ports, the buttons, the layout, I do really enjoy how the Canon C80 and therefore the C70 feels. Overall, I felt like the Canon C80 was really great to work with, except for a few quirks that I'm about to get into in a moment, but it is just that classic Canon cinema build camera. I said that really poorly, but if you've used any of Canon's cinema cameras like the C200, the C500, or of course the C70, the C80 is not too far off from any of those. The build quality is great. The user interface is mostly pretty good. So overall, while filming this wedding, I did find the C80 to perform really well with all of these different features that they've added, from full frame, triple base ISO, and then other things that I didn't get to use, but that full size SDI port as well. Really great touches. Okay, now let's go ahead and get into the things that I personally found to be a bit more on the annoying side when it came to filming with the Canon C80, or just things that I think that they could improve in general. The first one, and definitely my biggest piece of feedback, is that just like on the C70, there's still no EVF or even an option for an EVF. There were rumors floating around before the C80 was released that there would be a removable EVF option, similar to how the GFX 100 Mark II has that removable EVF. You just pinch on these two buttons, it slides off, then slides on. Something along those lines would be great. Maybe they could still add it in and just have something that screws in on the top and then plugs into the camera. I'm really not sure, but as of right now, that's just not a feature that you have with the Canon C80. And to be honest, this is my next point, it's really tough in super bright sun to see this touch LCD screen. Oftentimes I was really squinting or trying to cover the screen so I'm able to see what exactly I'm filming, and in reality I had to rely a lot on my waveforms to be able to tell if what I'm filming is even exposed correctly, because it was just really tough to see on this LCD screen. There's more things. I also think that this LCD screen's a little bit small on the Canon C80. For a camera of this size, I don't know, I just want a larger screen, especially because there's no EVF as a secondary option. So I think that those two things combined made the user experience a little bit lackluster. I felt like I wanted an external monitor the whole time, but if I were to add an external monitor, that really changes the feel of this camera. I love that it just feels like a larger mirrorless camera with built-in ND filters. This is how I want to use the camera, not rigged out. So I wish there was an EVF, and I wish that the LCD was at least brighter, but also a little bit bigger. Now this is an issue that I had, but maybe it won't be an issue to you, but I found it a little bit awkward to use on my gimbal. So I have the RS4 Pro from DJI, which is a really strong gimbal, and it did work, to be clear, but it definitely just was hard to balance because basically this camera is skinny and tall, so it's a lot of weight in one area, and if you're not using a pretty heavy lens on the front to counterbalance the camera, it's just a little bit tougher than I'd like to balance on my gimbal. Maybe I could have used counterweights or something like that, but I didn't have any, so I don't know. The camera as it is, I mean, it did work, totally worked, but it definitely stressed out the gimbal motors more than I would have liked. So yeah, a little bit awkward, at least rigged out just like this with the lens on my gimbal. But to be honest, other than those things, I don't really have too many negative things to say about the Canon C80. I did really like it. Now, like I said, this is my friend's Canon C80, and he actually has owned this camera for years, so I thought it would be interesting to get his opinion as a C70 user of the Canon C80.
Hey, I'm David Altizer, and I've actually been an owner-operator of the C70 the day it came out, somewhat. I ordered it when it was still in the pre-order phase back in 2020. And I love this camera. I love the DGO sensor. I love the autofocus, the built-in NDs. And yes, even the floppy screen has actually gotten worse the more I've owned it. Yeah, I still like this camera.
So David, you've enjoyed the C70 as you've said for a while now, but what is something that you were hoping that the C80 would get, whether or not the C80 actually got that upgrade?
So the only thing that I really wanted with the C70 was full frame, and the C80 did do that. I'm not a person that cared about the HDMI or SDI situation because a lot of the professional corporate shoots that I have done are used to working with people that have HDMI. So under each tripod is one of those little Blackmagic converter boxes, and they would just hand me an HDMI cable because they just assumed my camera didn't have SDI anyways and convert it to SDI, and that was never a real problem for me. Yeah, that was really it. I didn't like using this here adapter, which I have on here. This is the speed booster that Canon makes. It's very high quality and it does its job well, but it just feels like going backwards in time because you were forced to use old EF lenses, which are actually technically discontinued. Canon does not make them anymore. So you're using old glass, slower to focus, bulkier, heavier, just to simulate that kind of full frame look.
Based on everything that you understand about the Canon C80, the features that it has, what's one thing that's the biggest disappointment or missed opportunity in your opinion?
So the biggest disappointment for me with the C80 when I saw it was that there was no EVF. That is an issue with this camera in my opinion. And there's really not that many great external EVF options out there. I think Zacuto has an EVF. There's the Portkeys EVF that a lot of people use, but you have to put a big battery on it. You gotta have cables everywhere. I really would have loved some sort of, even if it's an additional purchase, like if they figured out a way to, like on the hot shoe or something, slot something in, kind of like how the Blackmagic cinema camera does it. Something like that would be wonderful because, I mean, imagine like a flippable EVF on this. It would just feel right at home when you're shooting outdoors. To have that, to be in that position, to see your footage in the sunlight. I've been forced to use a little monitor hood that I bought, and I would stick that on here, and when I'm outdoors, I'd have like a hood that went up to here. So it was a big, shaded the whole screen. It worked great, but there's a lot of touch screen functionality on this, so sticking my finger like through the hood was kind of annoying. The lack of an EVF for me was the biggest disappointment.
So those are my first impressions using the Canon C80 in a real world environment. I definitely should be doing more testing with this camera. I never did shoot in RAW. I think that the RAW capabilities of this camera are really interesting. And to be honest, I would love to use it in a live production environment so I can use that SDI output. But unfortunately, I didn't get that opportunity as of right now. So for now, these are my thoughts on the Canon C80. What do you all think of the Canon C80? Personally, I think that it's potentially one of Canon's most solid and versatile cameras in the video lineup, but that's just my opinion. Definitely let me know yours down below. Also, maybe hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I hope that you all enjoyed this video and found it useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy, guys.